Hello, and welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose. Day one, well, most of the day is in the books at the cricket, and we are here to recap it alongside me, as he is. I was going to say usually, but when we can get you, when we can pry you away from your other commitments, Adam Clemens, good to have you back, mate.
Yep, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me again. Yes, try to look busy sometimes, so it's nice to get away and do something that I enjoy for once. So, thanks for having me.
Well, the day that this pays enough for us to do a full-time income, we'll be here on call for everyone, right? So,
That's right.
in the meantime, we'll do what we can. And of course, speaking of doing what we can, make sure you do what you can. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe, get involved in the comments. Let us know where we're miles off the mark today or what your thoughts were. But Clem, let's start with obviously we talked at length about the Usman Khawaja piece in the lead up. Obviously, there was some talk of that. The other piece that was talked about in our preview was team lineups. England was very much, I guess, as expected, pots in for Atkinson, not much else to really talk about. The Aussies, though, a little bit of a curveball. We kind of talked about this, and I was having a conversation similarly with someone else recently, and we might get onto this at the end of this episode around the Usman Khawaja replacement in the future. But Bo Webster coming in, no spinner. The deck looked a little bit green. It looked a lot greener on TV than it did at the ground, but it was still quite green. But as we saw, and we'll get into the day's play, probably okay for batting, and England won the toss and batted. But were you surprised to see Webster come in at the expense of Jai Richardson?
Well, I think better to characterise by saying at the expense of Todd Murphy. I'm really disappointed that we didn't pick a spinner. Um, I think we've sort of missed a trick there too, without getting too far into it. I think even when it's not a completely spin-friendly wicket, and I think they fell into this trap in Brisbane as well. You can still control the tempo of the game, change it up a bit, just something different. In that game in Brisbane, England put the game in a bit of a holding pattern where they looked so comfortable against all the quicks, and they did it again today.
Yeah, they certainly didn't. And it's one of those things, and I know that we had some part-time spinners, but it would have been just going through the motions, remembering, and we'll get to the wash of this, but, we went off for bad light today. So, had we had, a Nathan Lyon, maybe even a Todd Murphy, and I get that he's green, he hasn't played on Australian decks in Test cricket, but just maybe, we could have at least tried to eke out, get a bit more leverage from the umpires in terms of, staying on there, get through to maybe the tea break, and maybe we get a breakthrough. Maybe we don't. Maybe England put on another 40 runs, but it's a gamble when they've got a 150-plus run partnership that I'd be willing to take. I was a little surprised they didn't, and we'll get back to that. But again, a frontline spinner, gives you more of a leverage point there for that option because you've got a frontline spinner and then your part-time spinner bowling at either end rather than a part-time and let's be fair to Smudge or Mann or even Bo Webster, who hasn't bowled spin, I don't think, in Shield for over 12 months. You're talking about a part-time spinner then.
Yeah, that's right. The bad light thing, we'll probably get a bit more into that a bit later, but I think, they missed the trick not having a frontline spinner. And then, obviously they have secondary spin options, I would call them. Bo Webster's not in the team because he can bowl off spin. He's in the team because he can bowl decent medium, sort of similar to Cam Green, but nowhere near as quick, you know what I mean? So he's I'm so disappointed we don't have a spinner. And it's like I said to you before, it's the fourth time in 6 tests now that we haven't picked a spinner, including the West Indies test. And I said it could be the death of spin bowling in Australian Test cricket. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's the death of spin bowling though, because like my gut, and again, we're only going on our gut. If Nathan Lyon was fit, there's no way they're not playing him in this test.
Yeah.
But it's a really poor reflection, and remembering that we went through this era after Shane Warne where we struggled, and we went through. I was having a look the other day. We were talking about it. The Usman Khawaja debut match. They had a bloke called Michael Beer playing. We had Adam Zampa play. Not Adam Zampa, sorry. Ashton Agar played. We had a number of people that we went through. We chopped and changed after the Warne McGill era. And I feel like we're now getting to that point again, except we're getting a bit of a preview of it pre-Nathan Lyon going out, which we didn't have with Shane Warne because you had SCG McGill waiting in the wings. And it's a really tough reflection. And again, I get it. I know Todd Murphy probably would have been a high risk versus medium reward probably option in terms of, and England had sort of said, whether they rattled the cage saying, we're going to target someone and we'll probably go after a spinner if they play Todd Murphy. It's again where I think, if you're going to go the high risk, and I talked about this in the lead up to Melbourne, I would have liked to have seen Corey Rocacholi come in because he's high risk, but he's a wicket-taking high risk. If they want to go after him, that's fine. Shane Warne used to have that mantra, and again, I know none of them are Shane Warne, but hey, go after him at your own peril. Wickets caught on the boundary count the same as the ball of the century.
Yeah, and that's I don't feel like Todd Murphy has the same swagger as a guy like Roccatroli to say, "Hey mate, if you want to go after me, go after me." But like, good for you. But eventually, I'm going to get you out.
Yeah, well, that's it. If they're taking swings at you versus leaving you and just patting you outside the leg stump, you're a lot better chance. But anyway, so
That's right.
that was obviously the big change for the Aussies. The English, they won the toss. As I said, they went into bat. It looked pretty even in that first session, it's fair to say. We got 3 wickets. Each time England would just start to get set again, and then we'd get another breakthrough. 1 for 35, 2 for 51, 3 for 57. Those next two were sort of back-to-back. They ran over apart. But England, the batsmen all got starts, and it showed there was something there. And then as the pitch settled a little bit, Joe Root, Harry Brook came in and, pardon the pun, but they made hay while the sun shone.
That's right. And look, Harry Brook and Joe Root are the two best batsmen in that team. There's no doubt about that. But actually, for the first time in what feels like a long time, we had Test cricket that looked like Test cricket. They were going at lightning pace. But really, the fact that they seem so settled now, it makes the decision not to play any decent, meaningful warm-up games seem even more frustrating in hindsight for the English because they look more and more at home the longer they stay here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, though. I was listening to another podcast talking about this man as Andrew Mensel, who's been on the show a couple of times. And, he was going through with Cricket Unfiltered, and he was talking about the fact the problem with tour games, right, is that, and we've seen what happens. We go to India ready for dust bowls, and they give us a green seamer for our warm-up game. So unless you're prepared to pay enough to make sure you get what you need, and even that Lilac Hill game, they didn't get much of a deck there when they played against themselves. But again, and I heard some English fans. I was walking down towards where my car was parked at Surrey Hills after play today. Heard some English fans, and they're still going on about the only thing the English had planned 12 months out was a very detailed itinerary of what the hell they were going to do in Noosa.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably a bit of a smack in the face to those guys, like to the fans especially, that they had this getaway booked in Noosa for a week between tests, but they didn't go ahead and organise warm-up games. And the more cricket we play, the better they look. So, I mean, that's something that they'll carry into the next time they come here, and I'm sure into other overseas tours, but a little bit of too little too late, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think to that point, right, like Crawley got 16, Duckett 27, Bethel got into double digits. All of them looked a lot better than they've looked. Probably Bethel the exception because that second innings in Melbourne, he looked very good. But they all looked good and got out with decent deliveries. There was a bit of movement in that first session. We saw that. But as you say, they've played better cricket. I know Duckett went a bit more than a run of ball, but he got hold of a couple of loose ones right at the end and then, fell to Stark going after another one. He got a bit too excited, which that's the two sides of the coin that is Bazball, as they'll call it or won't call it. But this looked like a lot better cricket. Admittedly, the pitch had, maybe a 20 to 30% bearing on that. It was a bit more conducive to bat and ball this morning, which is why we saw the toss won and they elected to bat. But as you say, this looks like Test cricket. I'm just hoping it doesn't deteriorate too much, that it becomes too bat friendly tomorrow. Obviously, there's still talk of there being some cloud about over the remaining days, but it's an interesting situation. That partnership now is over 150 for Root and Brook. They're both into the 70s. They're looking really settled. Australia probably need to capitalise in the morning, get a breakthrough here, get through Stokes, and then, this batting lineup, though, if they can continue on with a couple of other guys getting settled, they could put on a really big score here, England. I could see them, if these two both get centuries, they could go on with, the likes of Stokes, Smith, Jacks all being able to bat a little bit. The bottom three then will just have to be able to swing from the hip, and they could get 400 to 500.
Yeah, so I think the run rate at the moment is something like 4.8 or something. So they're well on track to, if we played a full 90 overs today, and then another 10 well, yeah, I know, wait for the punchline on that one, but if they've had it for 100 overs, that's 490 runs by the end of the first session tomorrow. If we didn't lose this last session today, and they could still get to up to 500 conceivably by the middle of the second session tomorrow if we get a full day's play. So they put themselves right in the box seat to go on with it. And it doesn't feel like the other tests where they get in the box seat and you just know that something is around the corner.
Yeah, it hasn't really looked like that. I know, Stark and Neser and Boland all at different points had them sort of moving about a little bit. But again, a lot's going to come down to them. It's going to be about is there still something there for Green? Can he get a bit of that bounce out there? We know the SCG not renowned for having really strong bounce as you get into day 2 and day 3, especially if the sun comes out. Webster, what can he conjure and create? It is land of the giants. So when you look at our slip cord, and then you've got one of them building at 4th slip, and the other one at gully, or one at gully and one at point, and you just and even better because they got Steve Smith and Usman Khawaja just to their right. But it's going to be a big question about how those two guys can contribute, and then realistically, as the pitch starts to slow down, how our part-time and secondary part-time spinners, and we've got a few of them. Let's be honest. I think realistically, you've got Mahon, you've got Steve Smith, Travis Head will probably be the front-line spinner. But my goodness, we're starting to put a lot of hats on poor Travis Head's head.
He's become the everyman, hasn't he? I mean, a bit like Mitchell Starc was early in the series. He was hitting runs, taking wickets, doing everything, and now Travis Head's sort of going to be our frontline spinner. I know he'll relish in that, but again, like, you don't need to be a world beater to come in, change the tempo a bit, rush the batsman a bit. I tried to think about it today as like, I'm no good at golf, but if there's someone hitting up behind me and makes me rush, and then I start to play even worse, that's the sort of mindset you can get the batsman in if you can get them playing a different pace to what they've been used to for the first 2 sessions of the day.
Well, that's the thing, right? We got through nearly 2 sessions of game time, but we only got through half a day's play, 45 overs. But yeah, there's nothing worse in golf. And then you tell them to play through, and they're like, no. And then they're even further out your backside. And then you're like, don't watch me play. Anyway, we digress. So for the Aussies, it's going to be about early wickets tomorrow. You're going to need Starc, Neser and Boland all to strike in that first session. If Green or Webster can get one, beautiful. But realistically, 3 wickets, and we're on top of this. If we can get 3 wickets for less than 100 runs and keep them under 400, that pitch should perform beautifully in the back end of day 2 and day 3, looking at what we've seen so far. I don't think we're in a horrible position, but at the end of the day, runs on the board with not many wickets down are always runs on the board.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell. Obviously, only had 45 overs of play today. I've got some thoughts on that too for you in a moment. But if we do come out tomorrow and pick up 3 or 4 quick wickets and then somehow get them out for under 400, 350 maybe, that's a big win for us, because then we're probably going to get the best of the batting late on day 2 into day 3, and I think day 4 and 5 it's going to be 30 degrees, so over 30 degrees. So, we're probably going to get the best use of the pitch, and really, if you bat for long enough, you can put yourself in a position to not have to not have to bat last.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key, right? Like, we're going to have to be conscious of getting them out, and that's why I think that 400 mark at the rate they're going, it's still probably going to need, another 35 to 45 overs at the rate they are going. So if we can get them out middle of tomorrow, late in the second session, give ourselves the rest of day 2, all of day 3, and most of day 4, and then send them in. The challenge we have to do is we have to set a total that gives us enough so that we're chasing less than 100 on day 5 on that pitch, but also giving us enough time to get the wickets. So it's going to be interesting, and get the wickets on a deck if it is starting to get a bit crumbly, where we don't have any frontline spinners.
That's right. Now, I want to ask you, you have to forgive me, I'll listen to most of it on the radio today. The bad light delay seemed to come out of nowhere. They weren't talking about it. I don't know what it was like at the ground, but it felt like the batsmen weren't having any trouble seeing the ball, and then all of a sudden the umpires come to them and say, "Oh, do you want the light?" And they took it straight away.
It did get pretty dim, I will be honest. Yeah. There was a big cloud front that came across in front of... As you'd be aware, you're in Newcastle. There was a big storm that came through Newcastle. There was a big storm that hit. Yeah. And at first, we were watching it coming in, around the lunch break in terms of on the radar. And it looked like, you see the colours on the radar. It looked red, yellow, and black on the radar. And it looked like it was tracking straight for the middle of Sydney. Then it drifted north of us. So we only ended up getting the bottom of it, which was the rain and the sprinkle and the drizzle, which wasn't much at all. We had an English bloke in our box with us, and he kept going, this is good summer weather in England, with a bit of drizzle. Just play through it, boys. But they'd gone off the light. And as you know, once they go off the light, they can't come back till the light improves. Yeah. Then you compound that with rain. It was challenging. I think the Aussies probably could have, if they had have really wanted to push and say, hey, we'll bowl spinners from both ends, whether first choice or not. But I'm guessing that Steve Smith first of all, he's a captain who underbowls himself, so he's probably looking at going, well, hang on, I'm going to have to be one of the blokes bowling here, because otherwise we're going to have the ADHD lunatic of Marnus, coming in, and he'll bowl a couple too quick, and then the umpire will kick us off anyway. So I think that's probably what happened. It was quite dim. I was wearing my sunglasses because I need them so I could see the play from where we were, but that's okay. But yeah, it was quite dim. It was that cloud front that was coming on the front of a storm. You know how it can quite often get quite grey and black on the front of a storm. We didn't get the storm there, but that's what it was. So it's set an interesting precedent though if we do get much cloud, because to that point, I think they went off earlier than they may have in other circumstances.
Yeah.
And as you know, that then gives the option to any team, once the light meter reaches that level, they can straight away just go, we want off. And because they've allowed one batting team to go off, irrespective of spin or anything else, I believe the way it's worded is basically it's the batting team's decision then. If if the light meter reading was 7, if it gets to 7 again and the Aussies are batting, even if they want to bowl Jackson Root, the Aussies can say, no, we're out of here, thank you. Because that's the reading that they went off at. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully that doesn't become the case. And we did just sort of have a bit of a chuckle today that it's a little bit ironic that we might finally get a 5-day test, but still only get 2 days of play. Classic Sydney.
Yes, exactly. And I did go back and have a bit of a look at some of the. There's always the stats coming out about Sydney and the rain, but I think that every single year this week in January it rains in Sydney, and this is not going to make me popular, but I think that Sydney and Adelaide, at the very least, should rotate through this slot because, not just because of the rain, but because 13 out of the last 16 tests at Sydney Cricket Ground have been a dead rubber.
It's an interesting thought. I would go as far as saying that, you'd have to look at the mathematics and the permutations of it because, like next year, for instance, we don't have a 5-test series. So that starts to change things up a little bit. So you might still have dead rubbers and those sorts of things. But I'm not against it. I wouldn't even be against if they got there occasionally and just said, hey, we're actually going to give Adelaide the New Year's test and Sydney's going to play on the 10th of January or the 15th of January or whatever the next test is and play one a little bit further. And I know it starts to interfere with the Big Bash a bit more, but especially next year where I think we go over to India in the middle of our test summer after I think we kick off against Afghanistan and then we come back and play South Africa and New Zealand or something like that. It's a weird one. I think October we might have South Africa and then it's all over the shop the test summer next year because we owe New Zealand some tests in their preferred window. India some tests in their preferred window. Yeah. But look, I'm not averse to it. I think realistically, I love the New Year's test in Sydney. It works really well in terms of culture and all those things. But it's a bit like the poor bloody, and I did a BBL video the other day, the poor bloody Sixers and the Heat, they go to Coffs Harbour every year and they never get a game because Coffs Harbour gets the same rain. I don't know what the weather's like right now. They're about to get started, tomorrow I think it is. So they'll get tomorrow, the next day they'll get underway. So I don't know what the weather forecast in Coffs is, but the last couple of years have either abandoned it or shortened it. So it must be something about the East Coast, although Coffs seems to rain every time they have an event there.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said, like this year, this time of year, every single year, if rain doesn't actually come, it threatens to come like to Sydney. So obviously we've got a pretty promising forecast for the rest of the test. I don't really want to get into the full nuts and bolts of it, but when the 3 tests that haven't been dead rubbers have all been against India. And that's because in the past, we used to play 4 tests against them. So we'd play 2 tests against a different team and then play 4 against India. And the Sydney test would normally be the second or third test when the silverware is still up for grabs. So that's obviously changed now. We play 5 against India. But look, for full context, I'm a member at Sydney. So I love going there and watching cricket. But I kind of want to go there when there's a meaningful game on, and
we'll still get a test, right? Like that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is, it's these. I love these dyed-in-the-wool guys. They're like, we've always had the New Year's test. Well, we haven't. And second of all, we used to play 8-ball overs too. So should we go back to that? Yeah. We used to play on uncovered pitches with no helmets, and
they should make them play with the
and T20s. But hey, T20 goes all right now. We used to play unlimited, untimed tests. Do you want to do? Yeah. Let's be real. The game has to evolve.
Exactly right. Well, if those guys say that, I have to say, I hope you didn't tune into the Brisbane test because they played a day-nighter.
Yeah, well, they're probably up in arms about the pink ball too, but there's so many different things. Right? Like we also didn't used to play international cricket in Australia in August, or July as we did this year. But how good is it having a summer of cricket that goes from July to February, or July to March?
Exactly. Exactly.
Just get with the times, guys. Anyway, we could tee off on this for a while.
Oh mate, we go forever.
Game plan for day 2, Clem. Obviously, you and I both being at the cricket is exciting, and we'll have some sort of episode tomorrow, but it might be early, it might be late. It's going to depend on the state of both of us, and we'll see how we get to. But early wickets for Australia, that gives them an advantage if they can pick up, say, 2 to 3 wickets in that first session, probably 3, like they did today. For the English, 1 or less is obviously a big win, because if they're by the end of that session, they're 4 for 300 and something on their way to a monster total.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Obviously, the first session again, it's almost like hitting the reset button tomorrow when they peel the covers off. I'd say there'll be a bit of juice in the pitch early on, and then it probably will flatten out once the sun hits it. So that first hour again is going to be so key for our guys, because like Root and Brook both batted pretty freely today. So if we don't get them early, as you said, it could be in for another long day. And I think even if they do go on, I reckon they'll pull up stumps about before tea and get us back into bat. So by then, if they're cruising, they'll be well over 500 runs in front.
Yeah, I've still got trauma from watching. I'm trying to think who it was, whether it was Bairstow maybe, that got big runs last time, or 2 tests ago at the SCG, just sitting there for a whole day on day 3 or day 4 and just watching him just bat and bat and bat. Yeah. So it was one of their ginger middle orders, which doesn't narrow it down very far.
Yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, what we do know is going to be a cracking day's cricket. Forecast is good for the next couple of days. Hopefully we see plenty of runs. Hopefully we see some Usman Khawaja at some point tomorrow.
Yep.
But as always, Clem, a big thank you to you, mate. Looking forward to catching up with the cricket tomorrow.
Yep, thanks a lot for having me, mate, and I'll see you there.
And a big thank you to you all for tuning in. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. Get involved in the comments. Let us know what you think. And we look forward to bringing you some more updates tomorrow and some more content over the coming week. But until next time, a big thank you for tuning into your home of the black and white of sport. No grey opinions here.